You may have heard about migrants being bused or flown to different cities across the country. In this video, we'll discuss what's happening. The governors of Texas, Arizona, and even Florida have been sending migrants released at the US-Mexico border to democratic cities as a political statement about the increase in border crossings. Now, nonprofits have often provided migrants with bus or plane tickets to get to cities where they have family or friends, but that's been on an individual basis, not on a charter bus or plane. What's happening now is different. States are sending buses, and even planes in one instance, of migrants recently released after crossing the border with no notice to local officials and organizations in the receiving cities, leading to confusion and cities overwhelmed to provide services. Migrants on buses from Texas reported they were not provided water or food. Many say they aren't even sure where they're headed. And sometimes the buses don't even go to major transportation hubs like Union Station in DC or the Port Authority bus terminal in New York City. Buses have also arrived at the Naval Observatory in DC, which is where the vice president lives. Migrants are being sent to Chicago, New York City, and Washington, D.C. from Texas and Arizona. The Florida governor paid for migrants to be flown from Texas with a stopover in Florida, where nobody got off the plane, to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. But many migrants don't even end up staying in these cities. They may have family and friends in other locations, and they will eventually make their way to those cities. Most migrants are coming from Colombia, Cuba, Nicaragua, with the vast majority from Venezuela. And some are coming from African countries as well. Many are fleeing horrific conditions and are pursuing asylum. This has been going on since April, with the first bus arriving in Washington, D.C. on April 13th from Texas, then from Arizona in May, and New York City and Chicago beginning to receive buses in August and September. In response, the Department of Homeland Security announced a new policy on October 12th that will send back most Venezuelans crossing the US-Mexico border unlawfully. Just over 14,000 people have been transported from Texas and Arizona since this past April, with the majority going to Washington, D.C. and New York City. This is a publicity stunt that is inhumane and does not take into account the suffering the migrants have already faced from a months-long journey, often on foot, to the danger that they fled to request asylum in the U.S. And this is eerily reminiscent of the so-called reverse freedom rides in the 1960s, when Southern states sent Black people to northern cities with false promises of jobs and housing. Seeking asylum is legal, no matter how you enter the United States. Migrants released at the border seeking asylum are legally present in the U.S. It does not matter that they crossed the border without papers or came into the U.S. with a visa. These individuals are here legally. They've crossed the border and were released on humanitarian parole or to pursue their asylum claims. They must appear in immigration court or report regularly to immigration authorities. So what's being done? Fortunately, volunteers and advocates have stepped up through mutual aid networks to provide food, clothing, and support. Many individuals don't have a place to stay, so advocates have been helping them go to shelters or finding housing options. These organizations have been welcoming migrants stepping off the buses since the very beginning. City agencies are scrambling to provide services and have slowly begun to create offices and resources. Remember, many children are also on these buses, and they will be enrolling into school, even if they live in a shelter, and they have the right to do so, even if they move to another school district or city or state. So what can you do? You can learn more about the situation by taking the English Learner Portal's What's Happening Immigration News course. You can learn more about the immigration legal system and the legal journey facing your immigrant students. You can support the organizations who are working to support and help the migrants. You can make sure that your classroom and school are welcoming environments for all students. And most importantly, you can vote. Thanks so much for watching. Go to EnglishLearnerPortal.com to learn more and take our courses and receive monthly updates on immigration news.